Hello, today we're going to talk about directional verbs in ASL, but before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about verbs in English. Most of the time when we think about verbs, we think about an action, right? Like sleep, drive, go. Those are indeed action verbs, but we have other verbs in English as well, like auxiliary verbs, am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been, right? Like I have been dreaming of eating her cookies. In that example, have and been are auxiliary verbs because they're getting us ready for the actual action, which is dreaming. We have some similar distinctions in ASL. First, in ASL, we have plain verbs, and those are verbs that need a subject and an object. Like I can't just use the word cook. I have to have someone doing the cooking, and then they have to have some food to cook. Like Sarah cooked burgers or Sally drove my car, right? So it needs a subject and an object. But there are other kinds, those are plain verbs. There are other kinds of verbs in ASL that work differently. We also have spatial verbs, and that's where you use space in order to talk about where things are. We let our sign space mimic actual space and kind of become a copy for what's going on. The last kind of verbs we're going to talk about today, at least, are directional verbs. Sometimes they're also called inflecting verbs because of the way they change. But that's where the subject and the object are sort of implied in the movement of the sign. So here's another definition of directional verbs. They are actions whose movement can change depending on the source and destination or object that is moving. So you're going to, depending on where the information starts and where it's going, is going to depend on how it moves. We've talked about plenty of these before. Actually, in the very first set of vocabulary I taught you in ASL 1 included directional verbs, like help and ask. Here's a list of directional verbs that you should already be familiar with, except maybe summon. We probably skipped that one because of changes in curriculum. But the rest of these you have probably seen. Now I want to show you a list of new ones. Here are some other words that can also be signed directionally. We'll come back later and go through this list and I will show you specifically how these signs look. But right now I just want you to get the concept of how directional signs move. So watch this example from your textbook to see what's going on. If you were just to voice through that video, it would be really repetitive, right? Like he showed her the picture, he handed her the picture. And then she signed the same thing. He showed me the picture, he handed me the picture. And then the woman in the back was like Captain Obvious, the narrator. She said, he showed her the picture, he handed her the picture. Yes, that sounds really repetitive, but if you watched it in ASL, you'll notice all the signs move the same way. We could also change it. You could say he showed her the picture, or he gave her the picture, and then Michelle could say, I received the picture, right? You could kind of change the way that verb works, but in ASL, everybody signed it the same direction because of how the object was moving. Here, watch another one with some different verbs. And here's one more example. They're so funny. But anyway, directional verbs are not difficult as a concept to understand. The trick is just keeping track of where everything is. That is why when you're signing, it's so important to play the movie in your head, to visualize, even if you don't have those two people sitting in front of you, when you're telling the story, you can still picture them there so that your verbs are always moving in the correct direction. I have one more video I want to show you right now. This is Priscilla telling a story where she doesn't have those people standing in front of her, and yet she can make it very clear which direction her verbs are going and who the characters are by the way she signs it. So take a look. First, she's going to show you some unfamiliar vocabulary. And now here's the story, surprise for you.